This is Optometrists Building Empires, and I'm your host, Ankit Patel. Each week, we'll explore the journey of multi-practice ownership and leadership in optometry. Join us for insights and strategies from the top minds in our field. This show is sponsored by My Business Care Team. My Business Care Team helps your office increase revenues, reduce costs, and reduce staffing headaches. Let's build your empire together. Today's guest I'm excited to have on the show. She's an accomplished optometrist specializing in vision therapy and Neuro-Optometric rehabilitation. She's a board-certified optometrist through the American Board of Optometry and among only 1,200 optometrists to actually hold this prestigious certification. She's a California ambassador for the American Board of Optometry, and Dr. Sharieff's training includes fellowships in the College of Optometrists in Vision Development and Neuro-Optometric Rehabilitation Association, allowing her to provide specialized hospital consultations for patients with neurological vision issues like double vision and visual field loss. She's the owner and neuro-optometrist at Vision Performance Optometric Center. Please welcome Dr. Kauser Sharieff. Dr. Sharieff, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
I was going to say, yeah, I'm excited to talk with you because I think you're one of the first guests or one of the few guests who have such a deep specialization in neuro-optometry and how you built an empire with that. So let's start off with the first question. What would you say is your most important thing that helped you grow your empire?
Okay, I'll have to go back to a little bit of my childhood, or at least when I was, thinking about careers. I wanted to be a surgeon like my father. And due to some circumstances, then things didn't happen the way that I wanted to. And I got married and had my husband, come here to the US because there were more opportunities for learning and, I guess to grow. And when I came here, I evaluated the situation. I had, a kid and I wanted to pursue medicine, but then kind of realized the trajectory timeline wise. And I thought, okay, I wanted to be a little more balanced and make sure that I had my time for my kids and have a good career. And I chose whatever was around me. It's not like I could just go to whatever I wanted to do. So I had to scope the area where we live. And optometry seemed to be a really good fit because at the time we were in the process, I think the profession was in the process of getting therapeutics in California. So that kind of enticed me to, pursue. And I decided if I do this course, which is going to be a little bit shorter, then I'm going to make sure that, at least I made up my mind that I'm going to make sure that I'm going to pursue and do something, specialized and something to make a real difference in the profession. So that was my intent to join optometry, and that from the get-go.
Yeah. And why did you want to, what was your success factor that enabled you to grow to multiple practices? Like, what would you say the one most successful thing would be that helped you grow your practices?
I've been kind of pushing myself, from, I guess, a student and kind of trying to take on more and more challenges. And so whatever I did, I tried to practice to the full extent. Even though I worked in a retail environment, I dilated all patients to their dismay initially, but then later on they realized this was something that they had to do anyway. And I co-managed a lot of patients with referred to ophthalmology, and I was able to detect a brain tumor at one point because of the pupils. So my appropriate diagnosis and thorough exams, I think, yielded really good ophthalmology, referrals, and they were sending all these letters, thanking me and things like that. So when I decided to open my own private practice, I continued that route, and I was able to secure a lot of contracts with IPAs because I had, these letters to show them, the level of, work that I do. So slowly but surely, I was able to, gather, able to sign up with these IPAs. And
what is IPA? Sorry, I'm not familiar with that analogy, that initials abbreviation.
Okay. IPAs are Independent Practitioner Association. I think they're
Okay,
like the managed care associations.
got it. Okay, thank you.
Right, right. These medical groups. So once I signed up with them, I know I was one of two people in two of these contracts. And one of them was like they were growing exponentially.
Mm.
And then they asked me, if I do have another practice further down south where they were expanding and kept asking me a few times. So I decided to open the second practice.
Okay.
And
That is a really good strategy. So you are so good that people were like, I would venture to say you're probably one of the best, if not the best, in your area at specifically certain types of treatments. And you got so good at it, you had doctors telling you how good you were, and you used that as a way to leverage your network partnership. So you grew through partnership channels by being so good at one specific skill set. It sounds like is that accurate to say?
yeah, I think I was, like I said, pushing myself all the time. And I happened to also work in an ophthalmology office and who actually was very versatile. I mean, he did everything. Even though he was a pediatric ophthalmologist, he was actually a teaching kind of a doctor for residents. And so he had that, you know, I mean, he always wanted to show me and teach me things. So he did everything, right from strabismus surgery, cataracts, enucleations, blepharoplasties. I mean, you name it, glaucoma. I mean, even though I was there for a couple of years only, part time, I felt I had 10 years of residency training. And I just felt my ocular disease book came alive because I would see these, amazing and difficult and really bizarre things that we only saw in textbooks. So all that walked in the door, and he invited me to watch his surgeries also. So I watched strabismus surgeries, cataract surgeries, and anyway, so later on I realized the other ophthalmologists that I co-managed with, they were just so narrow in what they did, their scope, like, but this person that where I worked was obviously very, very versatile. So I felt like I had a really good, foundation from the get go. That was my first job initially, while I was trying to work in these other retail kind of settings, um, and a couple of optometrists before I opened. So,
Okay. Excellent. So let me ask a slightly different question here. What was the biggest challenge that you didn't expect that you ran into when you went from 1 to 2 practices and we started growing? What was the one challenge that you didn't expect to see?
well, let me answer that slightly differently. When I started my very first practice, um, the first thing I guess my challenge was I've never really worked as I mean, I did have a lot of background working. So managing the staff obviously was a big shock to me. Um, I, I did buy a practice. It was not very busy, but an older practice. The gentleman was retiring. And I had this staff member who was not very pleasant to work with. And obviously, she left maybe just a month or two later. It was a shock because I didn't know anything what to do, right? So I went through consultants. I hired a consultant right away just because I didn't know how to manage a business.
Mm.
And I think that was actually a pretty good foundation. It was something that they taught me to be very objective, managing my statistics. And so they called me once a week after we had like an initial, evaluation and training for a week, very throughout the year. So they made me like, obviously build on some of the skills that I had, but learned a lot more. And I think I learned and I read and they had a lot of material. I think that was the biggest, I think,
Mm.
surprise and a shock that I had initially. So because of that, I felt, okay, I laid down these, some sort of a system. I really understood how to understand the different posts in the office, how to be objective, how to monitor, how to evaluate, you know. So with that foundation, the second practice was a breeze.
Okay.
And um, Also, I should share that my husband, he's kind of the one that's went to this being an entrepreneur, and so he's an executive MBA. I mean, he completed this executive MBA from Pepperdine. So all his life has been a manager. He's done a million managerial courses, and he's an engineer. So he was obviously kind of supportive, and every single minute of his waking life, he wants me to be a better entrepreneur. Whether we are driving a weekend, it doesn't matter, even to this day. So, and he helped manage one of the practices that I opened. The second one, it happened to be like in a more of a retail setting where we had to be open 7 days a week. So he completely managed the staffing of that, because he's used to operations that run 24/7, day and night. So he brought in systems and he designed like tracking sheets. And, I mean, he got very involved. He used to hire and fire, and he enjoys managing people. He enjoys bringing people who are not skilled, but making them very productive. And it's amazing. Like, he really, really enjoys this,
So that sounds like a great insight for folks who are listening, like finding that person who I think you said it best, who enjoys developing people, who enjoys the management side of it. That is a really good insight.
And I learn to this day, from him constantly.
That's good. So why even grow? I mean, you could have been happy with just one practice. Why go to two? I know people ask you to grow, but what was it about you and your desires? Like, what do you think makes you tick in terms of wanting to grow your business?
I did put a lot of thought into it. We were doing great with one practice in a, fairly good setting where we are. It's just an extension of, I guess, responding to their requests. I didn't put a lot of thought into it. Um, so, it just came my way. And like I said, my husband actually, he wanted to buy a company called Frame and Lens a long time ago. I'm not sure if you're aware of that, but it was like a retail chain. And he was very much into like, he wants me to have like a chain of optometry offices. And, eventually I told him that's probably not the way I want to go at this moment. Because I love doing routine eye exams, but I don't know if I could sustain just being a primary care eye doctor. So I
Yeah.
told him that, yeah. So it's a little different trajectory, with what he wanted to do and or was interested in. But um, I was happy with what I was doing, and I wanted to do more.
How is it working with your spouse? 'Cause I think a handful of folks probably listening probably do. I mean, myself included. My wife is the optometrist, and when we started our practices, how do you? What are some things that you might share to that you find is valuable working with the spouse? Things that you have to watch out for. Anything that any insights that you can share, especially when you get multiple locations, it gets a little more complicated. How do you manage all that with your spouse?
But like I said, he's extremely driven, so he's just constantly advising me, and in terms of how it's going, it's like I feel like we don't talk a whole lot either. My staff asks me, "Do you guys ever talk to each other?" Because he has his own e-commerce business that he set up from scratch, and so he's very, very, very involved in that. He may spend 10 minutes with me talking in the evening because he works. Normally, he works 7 days a week. Currently, he has an unusual health challenge, so I'm helping his e-commerce a little bit. But yeah, he's extremely, extremely driven because he feels with his knowledge and background and training that he had, he wants people to be entrepreneurs, and he wants to leave a legacy in the family about this and understand, because most of us are not real entrepreneurs. I mean, everyone in my family are all physicians and, people who are holding jobs and things like that. So, because he's so driven, it's just, I guess he doesn't have time for anything else. We don't do a whole lot more, but it's been interesting. Is all I can say. I wish we could have had like more time for hobbies or something else. I keep telling him he needs to have that. So besides that, He's just motivating all the time, every minute.
Gotcha. Okay. So it sounds like you're come from a very entrepreneurial, or at least your husband sounds very entrepreneurial, and I would say you sound pretty entrepreneurial too, in terms of the way you decided to grow the business. 'Cause you could have said any point in the journey, like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to take the next step. And so help me understand a little bit about maybe some of the challenges you're facing right now with the two locations, and what are some of the biggest things that keep you up at night?
Time management, you know, because early morning I have to, I do manage my husband's e-commerce business a little bit, the financial side of it, or just conducting meetings and things like that. So, and then all the time I had to grow my practice had been a little bit on cruise control for a little bit, but now things are getting back to where that's why, I'm doing a little bit more on my end and continue to grow.
I was gonna ask, what is it that, now that you are, it almost sounds like you said cruise control with your business, with the optometry practice, what do you see as, like, talk a little bit about that, like, why do you feel comfortable stepping, like, not having to be in there as much? Is it growing by itself? What are you doing to that enabled you to get to the point where it's on cruise control?
Well, I mean, it was on cruise control, so I'm starting to pick up the reins now. But one of the thing is, I do have a staff member, who's been with me for say 24 years. Okay, and has kind of grown with me and kind of manages a lot of things. So having I've had another staff too who also had been with me for quite some time. So I think that kind of makes it a little more stable and, helps me with all, the paperwork and training if needed and things like that. And so also I have therapists and we do a little bit of cross training. It's an ongoing. I mean,
Yeah.
I keep adding stuff, I'm adding myopia control, I'm adding dry eye, because I enjoy every aspect of optometry, and that's probably my problem in a way, because I feel like I wish there were five of me. I absolutely, absolutely enjoy the ocular disease portion, which I think is critical if you want to be a neuro-optometrist, which people sometimes don't realize because people come from low vision and want to be neuro-optometrist,
Mm.
not realizing, oh, you need, binocular vision, foundation. And so along the way, I think because I've been able to assess the challenges and where I wanted to go, and I've taken the time to really fill in that gap. So I wanted to, my younger sister's a neurologist, so I've attended a lot of her meetings, and I thought, okay, I need to work with neurologically challenged people. And when I went to Nora first, I was shocked at how much binocular vision stuff there was. So immediately I went home and I signed up to do my fellowship in COVD, which I never thought I would do as a student because I was more into the medical, ocular disease and
Yeah.
specialty contacts. And I even got an award for low vision. VT was not my forte or my interest, never really understood it. But when I started doing this, it just blew me away. I mean, I did a lot of courses foundationally, went throughout the country and did some, curriculum courses on this. And finally, I realized this is so much more fascinating than the static eyeball, because I was excited initially to be able to manage glaucoma because I did all the certification as we got, And once you start working in practice, you're realizing, okay, you can treat them for up to 2 drops. Then just got to refer them to ophthalmology. You're not getting that satisfaction, right? So I think along the way, I've spent time into really understanding and educating constantly. I think that has allowed me to, grow the practice and train, uh, taking a lot of, help consultants as needed, um, training in the management, training in the, clinical. I've done that every single year since I graduated.
I'm hearing a theme around this, and I think if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, It sounds like you are special. You're constantly learning, sharpening the tool, sharpening your mind, sharpening your skill sets. You're specializing a lot, and that kind of it sounds like that's a big part of what drove your businesses to grow is that specialization. Would that be accurate to say?
Yeah, I think assessing the need,
Yeah.
and making sure that you get the right help, you know? And also, people go and attend seminars all the time. Okay. They go to NORA, they go to COVD, and they attend and they try to learn. But because I started a little bit late in life, I started my career after my two kids. So for me, I had to do a fast track. So in order to get to really understand it, I had to commit myself. I need to sign up for the fellowships. So I'm going to learn, from the sources that I need to learn and understand, and just make sure that I'm more, comfortable and confident about my knowledge, right? So you have to make that commitment. So I did my fellowships only to make sure that I could learn as fast as I could, because they direct you, right? They direct when you do a fellowship, they say, okay, you have to do this, you have to learn this, you have to, So I did that because I wanted to grow and learn faster and be good at it. And I think once you complete these fellowships, you're armed with this knowledge, and that makes you feel more comfortable. And in order to go to a hospital, I'm not sure if you know about the NORA fellowship. I think there are about 21 in the nation, that have completed this, or 21 in the world, or something like that, somewhere in the 20s. Okay. I was probably the sixth person that completed the fellowship, which I didn't know at the time that there were only that many fellows in the nation. But what it does is, when it allows you to go to the hospitals, and my ocular disease foundation was critical, because once you go to the hospital, you need to make sure you know the basics and triage them. Is it an emergency, or can you do them assess functionally? And interacting and having these physiatrists, the rehab doctors thank you and appreciate what you do.
How does so let me shift gears a little bit. I love the explanation of how you're telling how you got into it. How is this helping your business directly? Like by doing all this, how did it help your businesses? How did it help you grow? Like, can you kind of tell me a little bit more insight into how it helped you grow your practices?
Well, it allows you to get referrals. You
Yeah.
know, the more you know, the more you interact. I did in services at, like, I don't know, 6, 7 hospitals. You have to call them and you have to tell them what you do, what you can do. And for the rehab, facilities, you can, you have to arrange, and you have to be able to talk in front of people, right? So at UCI, for example, there were 50 therapists, in the library, in the hall. I've also done continuing education for neurologists, for physiatry, residents in the hospital who are training. I constantly do webinars and seminars, and so when you do that, you will get referrals. You are known, that this is an area that needs so much understanding and help in generally. The rehab people, they know it, right? But the general neurologists and the general physicians, there's so much more to do. So it's a constant, right? So you do this, you have to get out there, you have to speak, you have to interact, and then the referrals will start flowing,
So
right?
what
So
I'm hearing is if I'm trying to summarize what I'm some lessons, key takeaways that some of the listenership might be able to take away, is take care of the patient. And for you, that was following your curiosities and exploring these specialties in optometry that most people don't explore, getting good at them and being so good and talking about it that you built your network out by working with hospitals, working with physicians, going out there and speaking. And by building your network, that just sort of organically grew your practices as you partnered with the organizations that were expanding. And so you've gotten so good at your craft and taking care of the patient that people are proactively seeking you out versus you having to be knocking on doors or doing marketing and those type of things. Is that accurate to say?
yes, that is. I mean, like, one of the nearby hospitals, they have me on their list.
Mm.
When patients are discharging and if they're close by, then they come here. But I also should say one thing, my interaction with medical groups, the primary care, for example, I like that they give out a sheet where there's on one side, like there is mostly all of them are ophthalmologists. I'm the only optometrist on that, for diabetic eye exams. So they hand out that to the physicians and to the patients. So I enjoy, that medical part of it still too. So interact and I try to keep up with the medical groups. So I get these multitude of, um, referral sources that I've built over the years. And I try to continue that.
You're the first person I think we've talked to that has built a really heavy referral-based practice with these specialized medical procedures. A lot of myopic control folks we've talked to, a lot of dry eye and some other specialties, but the neuro side of it, I think it's exciting to hear that there's so many different ways to build a practice, and you've been so successful in a way that's unique that we haven't heard of much. So I appreciate you sharing that. You did mention one other thing I wanted to touch on. You mentioned having the right people on board, like the staff, longevity. Are you having challenges with staffing? If you're not having challenges, can you tell us what your secret is? And if you are having challenges, how are you dealing with it?
Okay, so I think I had that foundation of trying to, deal with people more objectively and about the post. It's about building and understanding what a post is. What's a receptionist do? What's an optician do? What are the different, segments, what their job responsibilities are, and then trying to, keep up with that. Now, I should say things have waned a little bit over the years, and I try to bring it back up. And, I'd be lying if I say I don't have any challenges, but I enjoy my work so much that, I just feel like I have this passion. And especially now that I do neuro stuff, it's like I love coming to work and getting paid is like a bonus. I look at it that way. And as far as the staffing goes, it's just an ongoing thing. It's 100 times worse when you're doing vision therapy because the type of people who come, the amount of training that it needs, and is it a career for someone or is it something that they come and go? So we do have training protocols and videos and hands-on. So we're able to bring people up to speed, and it's an ongoing thing. It's an ongoing challenge. Um, and I go back to my husband sometimes if I have challenges, and he puts me like in a more objective mode and talks to me about it. So I will say I have my fair share of challenges, but you just have to take it in your stride, like anything else, and just bite the bullet and fill in where you need to, and train them. So yes, we do. We have hired one remote, like virtual assistant. I don't think we're following up with that person as good as we should to get the most out of it. So that's another challenge. Like I said, time management for me has been a little bit of a challenge right now, since I'm doing a little bit of something else too, right? Besides my own businesses, which may have affected over the years.
And that is one thing you just mentioned that what we find is that if you have a virtual assistant, is you spend about 5 or 10 hours a week managing them on average. So, and that's if you, and it's hard to manage remote people, but that's actually really good insight into the job post or the actual job function, defining the roles really well, and also having a good leader in place, like your husband was helping you with that as well. And it sounds like you have a lot of longevity as well. So I think trying to keep people for long term is beneficial as well if you can avoid turnover as much as possible. Let's shift gears just one a little bit. I want to know about you as a person and share with the audience. Um, can you share a moment in your life that you felt that transformed you or made you who you are? So it could have been like like you had it was a you were in kindergarten and you sold candy bars for school or a college class or something. You mentioned a lot of interesting things that we could dive into here. Like you started optometry school after you had kids, right? So there's so much there. But can you share maybe one or two moments that are really impactful to you that you feel like made you who you are in terms of how you see the world, in terms of how you approach the business and approach life?
So, my dad was my world. He made me feel like the top of the world, like a princess. He treated me very special. I'm the oldest of six kids, and he was extremely strict. Like I told, I'm not sure if I told you, but he was a professor of surgery and surgeon. So he worked at teaching hospitals. So I just grew up in a medical college campus all my life, and that's all I ever knew. And my father had such an ability. He was so vested in his children. Both my parents are very, very, very hardworking. So my dad had a green thumb. We'd have a beautiful, you know, garden with vegetables wherever we went. And then I think my dad was every single moment of his life. I think he kind of used to just make sure he taught us. He wanted to give us the best education and went to a private school in middle school, I think. And I remember of all my education, I remember every single thing I learned in sixth grade. you know, this was a teacher from Canada, and she made us draw everything on one side, I think, and illustrate like what you're learning, history or whatever, whether it's science. I remember, I think, so that was so vivid. And for some odd reason, I think I was drawing eyes, doodling, I never thought that I'd ever end up being an optometrist. And just like a few years ago, I thought, oh my goodness, I used to draw eyes all the time, right? So, anyway, one of the things that my dad used to always tell us is knowledge is not anyone's property, it's yours to seek. Sky's the limit. I mean, he kind of like always instilled in us, and he's like, sell yourself for your kids. He was all about education. He was all about giving us the best education no matter what, you know? And I did get into medical school, but it was a different city than where we were living because we were living on a campus that had a medical school. I didn't get in. And just circumstances were such that he just didn't feel confident to send me away, I think. And he's like, I'm going to get you married and you can go wherever you want and you study, right? So I think to answer your question, I think there's so many moments that I think of my dad, how every single minute of his life, like he's all about conservation. He's like, you need to shut off the light if you're leaving the room. You need to make sure you close the tap completely and not dripping water. I mean, there were just little things. And then also, he just instilled in us so much. Like he would sit at the table, dinner table. He would make sure all of us ate stuff that he provide. We had to eat like everything that he kind of gave us. And I remember my brother, like he slipped a piece of fish in his pocket because he didn't want to eat it. And my dad wouldn't get up until we ate, right? So he felt like until you're 18, like the parents have to do this. He gave us these vitamin shots and all kinds of stuff. I mean, he really took care of us, I think, and he did it so thoroughly and so much with so much, I guess, passion in a way to make sure that he said, I see so much when I go to the hospitals. I see so many patients. I see so much there that I don't want my children to be unhealthy. And so he said, the only thing I can give you is really education, the best thing I can ever give you. So he groomed us literally. I think that's what shaped us. So I do have siblings and stuff who are all physicians, and, it's just being hardworking and being, something that people want to learn all the time. Like they're physicians, but when they come to my office and they see people cutting glasses, they're like, oh, maybe I want to learn how to do that. It's like wanting to learn, something all the time, wanting to, do whatever there is, right, to make it work.
So a thirst for knowledge sounds like a really core value to you, and learning and curiosity. It's really cool to see that because I think that's one of my personal values too. Because I enjoy learning too, so it's really neat to see that energy coming from someone else too. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, also, when you come to the country, that you kind of have to work hard, you know,
Yeah.
and So from the get-go, I was actually passionate about wanting to do something right anyway. So it didn't seem like work. It just seemed a joy. I enjoyed every bit of optometry, school, because I wanted to study so much. And finally, when I got the opportunity, I was like, I just cherished those moments, like every single thing. And also, you push yourself and you do the most challenging rotations. You do what it takes, like, to get the most out of it, right?
Excellent. I appreciate that. Now, last question I will leave you with that I always like to ask is let's try and travel a little bit. Um, 4 days after you graduate OD school, what advice would you give your younger self knowing what you know now?
I probably would have learned a little bit more about management, I think. I guess there are people who are doing MBA, and I think that would give you an edge because if you really want to do well, it's a business, and arming yourself, I think, is extremely important if you want to be successful. So I think I would have probably tried to do an MBA or something. So even I saw that personally too, where my husband used to talk a lot about wanting to start a business, but until he completed his MBA, that was the turning point to where he was able to really establish and grow a fairly successful e-commerce business, right? So I saw that in action also. And I've learned along the way. I've, taken a lot of consultant courses and read a lot. But personally, I think you're better off if you're running a business. I would have done that, had I known.
I think that's great insight about knowing yourself and your strengths and weaknesses. So, Dr. Sharieff, if people want to connect with you, where can they find you?
LinkedIn is a source, you know. I do have my website, Vision Performance, and there's an email, visionperformanceoc@gmail.com. Um, and my office numbers are there, up to locations, right? You're Belinda and Tustin. So I'm just a phone call away if need be.
Awesome. We'll put the email and the links in the show notes. Thank you again, Dr. Sharieff, for being a guest on our show.
Welcome.
And thank you, audience. If you learned something, laughed, or found something interesting, please share this with your friends and family. And thank you again, Dr. Sharieff. This has been another exciting episode of Optometrists Building Empires. We'll see you next time. That's a wrap on another episode of Optometrists Building Empires. Thanks for joining. For show notes and more, visit buildingempires.live. This show is proudly sponsored by My Business Care Team. My Business Care Team was born out of staffing challenges my wife and I faced together, managing multiple optometry locations. We refined our approach at Classic Vision Care and now offer our expertise to others. If you're experiencing challenges with staffing and you'd like to set up a discovery call, we'd be happy to help you and connect you with the right resources. We'll see you next time.